Welcome back to the podcast. Today we're going to talk about something very interesting again. Every single week is an interesting week, every single day is an interesting day. And today, in this episode, we're going to talk about one of the most complex, painful, but also profoundly human topics in psychology, which is trauma and the fractured psyche. When we talk about trauma, it's not just about the event itself, it's about what happens inside of us after the event. Allow me to repeat this. When we talk about trauma, it's not just about the event itself, it's also about what happens inside of us after the event. This means that trauma doesn't just scar the body, it reshapes the mind, it alters memory, and sometimes it fragments the very sense of who we are. Let's start with what trauma actually does to the psyche. When someone goes through a traumatic experience, whether it's abuse, violence, neglect, or even a single overwhelming event like an accident, the brain and body go into survival mode. You've probably heard of the fight, flight, or freeze response. In trauma, these responses aren't temporarily, they could just be stuck there. The psyche often splits in a way to protect the person. This is where we start seeing things like disassociation. Disassociation is when the mind kind of checks out to avoid unbearable pain. Some people describe it as leaving their body or watching things happen from a distance. In more severe cases, disassociation can lead to fragmentation of the self. Different parts of the psyche carrying different emotions, memories, and even identities. It's like the psyche is whispering to you, this is too much to handle all at once, and it wants to go to a break. So the psyche want to break into pieces. On the outside, this can look like memory gaps, emotional numbing, or sudden unexplained reactions. But on the inside of the person, it feels like living in pieces of that time never truly fully connect. As usual, let's begin with neuroscience because the brain gives us a fascinating and sometimes heartbreaking window into what's happening. Trauma fundamentally changes how memories are stored. Normally, memories are filled away like a story with a beginning, middle, and end. But in PTSD, which is post traumatic stress disorder, the amygdala, the brain alarm system, stays hyperactive, which it keeps signaling the word danger to you. At the same time, the hippocampus, which organizes memory into a timeline, turns off. What does that mean? This shows instead of the memory being stored as a part event, trauma is stored as a series of raw sensations, flashes of images, smells, sounds, and body reaction. This is why sometimes with PTSD doesn't just remember trauma, the person is actually re-experiencing the whole situation. So, for example, a sound like a firework can feels like a gunfire, a certain smell may bring back abuse, which shows that the body and the mind doesn't know it's the past, but it rethinks that it's actually happening right now. This is why trauma survivors says they either feel broken or they don't feel like they're themselves anymore. Because in a very real sense, their psyche and your brain circuits are caught between past and present. However, here's the hopeful part. The psyche has an incredible capacity to heal. The process is not about erasing trauma because we can't. The person experienced it. But what we can do is reintegrating the fragmented part of the self. There's three kinds of healing practices that is found very useful. The first is therapy. The second is EMDR, which is the eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. And the third is narrative reconstruction. So in therapy, like traditional talk therapy gives like survivors a space to put language into their past experience by naming what happened. People begin to reclaim their narrative instead of being trapped inside it. EDMR. This therapy uses bilateral stimulation, like guided eye movements, while recalling traumatic memories. The idea is that it helps the brain reprocess these memories, moving them from raw sensory chaos into a more integrated story. And the good thing about EMDR is that study shows that it reduces PTSD symptoms significantly. The third is narrative reconstruction, which is uh, it's about like helping the person to rebuild their life story. So trauma often shatters the timeline of one identity. So narrative work reconnects those fragments, allowing survivors to say something like, yes, the trauma did happen, but that is not who I am because of this trauma. So like there's more other experience practices include like somatic experience, which focus on releasing trauma stored in the body, which is more spiritual, and mindfulness-based therapies, which like help ground the psyche in the present moment, which is the here and now. There's CBT, which is cognitive behavior therapy to restructure the brain, which is very similar to narrative reconstruction, but CBT is more on the short term for PTSD, but a narrative reconstruction there's many research shows that it's more long-term based. So when we talk about trauma and the fractured psyche, we really we're like talking about the resilience of the human mind, how powerful the human mind it is. Yes, trauma breaks, it fragments, it hides piece of us away, but healing isn't about pretending it never happened. Facing it is the beautiful part. And healing is to gather those pieces one by one and weaving them back into a wholeness, which is the beauty of healing. Carl Jung said that I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become. And that's the essence of trauma recovery. Not erasing any past, but transforming it into a part of a larger, stronger self. Thank you for joining Dive into If this resonates with you, or if you're on your own journey of healing, know that you're not alone.